So what we're witnessing right now may end up being one of the biggest crashes, if not the biggest crash in history, as you have Donald Trump, sleepy president, right? He's bragging about sleeping today. And then you have the tech bros who are panicking as the money is drying up. We're talking about the AI bubble. Now, let me show you guys what's going on. We have some big breaking news happening right now. So first, stock market today, Microsoft leads tech sell-off, NASDAQ drops. We talked about that in the last video, basically billions wiped off. And it was one of the biggest one-day losses in history. And then you have this, Elon Musk SpaceX said to consider merger with Tesla or XAI. And if you listen to the earnings call, I posted that. You guys can watch that and also made a video about this. But basically, Elon's got nothing. And he's trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat, or at least pretend he's got a rabbit in the hat to pull out. Essentially what it ends up being, it's like he's going back to startup mode. And so now we're in full panic mode saying, you know what? I'm just going to start merging my companies around and start shuffling money around and let's go on hype. I mean, Tesla's done. If you're talking about this, Elon Musk SpaceX said to consider merger with Tesla or XAI. Okay. So let's see this. And you put these stories out there to float it and how Wall Street responds. SpaceX is considering a potential merger with Tesla, as well as an alternative combination with artificial intelligence firm XAI. And they've earned under trouble in the EU. They're doing a probe on Musk because basically Musk XAI chatbot undresses people, non-consensual, also involves children. It's as bad as you think it is. It really is. According to people familiar with the matter, so a sign that billionaire Elon Musk is weighing how to consolidate his empire. He's panicking. The firm has discussed the feasibility of a tie-up between SpaceX and Tesla, an idea some investors are pushing. Okay, not sorry, everybody, some. The people said asking not to be identified as the information isn't public, right? So these are internal discussions here. Separately, they are also exploring a tie-up between SpaceX and XAI ahead of an IPO, some people said. Oh, interesting. So again, they're floating this stuff out there to be like, okay, so if we go public, how much money are you willing to throw into this thing? Because, Elon needs that cash. Any transaction could attract sizable interest from an infrastructure funds and Middle Eastern sovereign investors, I see. Some of the people said a deal that could potentially require a large financing component, one of them said. All this stuff is based on debt. It's based on Elon, who is the supposed richest and supposed most genius, brilliant person in the world. But the thing is, whenever you listen to the guy speak, he's a moron. It's obvious. Anyone who can listen to this stuff. And then on top of that, so Elon's like shuffling money around, promising, oh guys, we're going to have an IPO and we're going to join companies. Okay, this is also big. OpenAI plans fourth quarter IPO in race to be Anthropic to market. Now, there's been talk out there that OpenAI could go bust by 2027, so basically next year, because basically they're just burning through tons of cash. These companies, right, they introduce their product. It's basically free for everyone. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, what's this cool thing, right? Everyone's using it. It's all free. But how are you going to make money? What's your revenue model? And so they've been trying to get people to sign up, paid service, but you just can't get enough people to cover the costs. And then they started to introduce advertising, which is very interesting because that may chase away users. And then it may, get into the scenario where I'll just go back to Google. And Google's like, you know what? We already make money from all of our various businesses. And then we got our Gemini, which is competing with OpenAI. OpenAI doesn't have that, steady revenue stream coming in. The rumor on the street, though, before was that maybe Microsoft would essentially just buy them outright if they were to go bust. But now with this whole IPO thing, this really changes the dynamics. This just came out just a few minutes ago. OpenAI plans fourth quarter IPO in race to beat Anthropic to market. So maybe like a September or something like that. Let's see what it says. And I'm actually really curious myself on this. It says OpenAI is laying the groundwork for a public listing in the fourth quarter of this year. People familiar with the matter said accelerating its plans as a competition with rival Anthropic intensifies. And I think Anthropic, they have Claude. I think that's what they call their chatbot. There's Gemini, which is Google, Claude, which is Anthropic, and then ChatGPT, which is OpenAI, and then Elon Musk is Grok. And then you can also talk about Copilot with Microsoft, which we'll get into a moment here. But this is really big because what if the money isn't there, right? Maybe they'll try to even rush this even sooner. The $500 billion startup is holding informal talks with Wall Street banks, right? They're trying to kind of get their feelers out there, right? The same way Musk is getting his feelers out there about a potential public listing. People familiar with the matter said, and is growing its finance team. I see. So they're hiring a bunch of people to try to pitch everyone how awesome they are. That includes the hire of a new chief accounting officer. Okay. And they've been losing people also. And they're also into lawsuit with Musk, which it's a whole rigmarole in itself. So they got someone, a new investor relations, a new accounting officer. It's expected to be a blockbuster year for stock market debuts after recent drought. Well, some of Wall Street speculating that 2026 could be the biggest year ever for IPOs. So remember I told you guys this could be the biggest crash ever. This could also be the biggest IPO ever, and you put the two together, right? So OpenAI, Rival, Anthropic, and SpaceX. So these would be the ones that we're talking about. And most closely watched tech darlings that could go public. Tough listing. Though listing, toughness, though, the listing activity has picked up for smaller companies. Pulling off a successful public listing by the end of the year is likely to be a difficult task. Why is that? The ChatGPT maker, which is still experiencing challenges of a fast-growing startup. The company has recently made changes to leadership ranks. Yeah, see, people have been coming and going. And then some of the people that leave will go to other companies or try to start their own company. It's a nasty world out there. And is contending with increasingly fierce competition to its core consumer business model from Google. Talked about before, Gemini, prompting it to declare a weeks-long code red. OpenAI is headed to the trial of the case brought to you by Elon Musk, which I mentioned, and then who is seeking $134 billion in damages, and then you got to build out all of your data centers and such. Here's a question here. It says, am I excited to be a public company CEO? Am I excited for OpenAI to be a public company? In some ways I am. And in some ways, I think it'd be really annoying. Okay, that's what Altman said recently, I guess. And that's where we are now. OpenAI executives have privately expressed concerns about Anthropic beating the company to IPO. Interesting. So it's a race to get that money. Basically, again, they're all fighting for dollars here. Anthropic, founded by the former OpenAI leaders, has told financial partners it is open to listing by the end of this year. So yeah, who's going to do it first? The startup sales are soaring, thanks largely to popularity of its viral coding agent, Claude Code, and is a process for raising funding round that is likely to exceed $10 billion target. Okay. You're fighting for money, trying to go IPO, and then you're also pissing off various entities around the world. I'm talking about U.S. tech, because France made it an interesting announcement today. It says, no more Zoom for French officials, France to use local alternative to U.S. tech, right? And so they're saying no more Zoom. I think they're using something that says Visio. If you guys use that, you can let me know. Instead of American-owned Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Here's a quote. Video conferencing services now play a decisive role in day-to-day operations of your central administrations, right? Everyone uses this stuff. And said in the letter to the cabinet, non-European made tools, he said, pose several risks, including cybersecurity and lack of control of data. So want to use their own stuff. Why not? I understand that. And if you look at what some of the American tech stuff is doing, this is actually coming out today also. There's a lot coming out today. U.S. has investigated claims of WhatsApp chats aren't private. Oh, God. And I mean, and if it does end up being the case that many of these apps, they're spying on you, they're looking at your data, all this kind of stuff, people generally don't like it. Especially stuff like this, the private app stuff or private messaging stuff. I wouldn't like it. And there's all sorts of sensitive issues with that. And I can see why people are moving away from, say, U.S. tech if these are indeed problems. And then you have stuff like this, which people in our community were pointing this out when I did the last video on Microsoft. I guess Windows 11 is a nightmare and no one likes Copilot is what it boils down to. This is from The Verge today. They were saying Microsoft is working to rebuild trust in Windows. Engineers are now focusing on performance, reliability, and overall Windows experience. And they describe all sorts of problems. And it's funny because my first reaction is, I wonder if this is going to end up being like the fiasco of Clippy. For those of you who are old enough to remember Clippy, you'll remember exactly it was an annoying little helper thing that you would always try to click away. Get away, Clippy. For young people, you may not know what it is, but it was how do you say it? Like a helper agent, little graphic thing. And it ended up just being more annoying than helpful. And this is what it says right here regarding Windows and Microsoft. Windows is in a weird spot. It's a 40-year history. The operating system has weathered its fair share of missteps, but Windows 11 is testing the patience of its users in new ways. Persistent bugs, so I guess the thing just doesn't work for whatever reason. Performance issues, which is a problem. Intrusive prompts, so just crap, popping up on you. And I remember Windows. There's so many iterations of it, but I remember sometimes where you get so irritated that you always have to close a a window in front of you. You're trying to do work and it just keeps popping up. Crap, I hate that. Ads. Oh, and Windows 11, you're getting ads. Interesting. And bloatware have eroded the core Windows experience. And bloatware, yeah, just throw a bunch of extra crap on there. Early system requirement decisions have also damaged trust among Microsoft's most loyal users, and erosion that's accelerated by the company's aggressive push into AI that doesn't always deliver on its promises. Okay, all this stuff sounds bad. It was very interesting. So full disclosure, I'm on an Apple computer. I have iPhone, so I'm in the Apple ecosystem. So I'm just unaware of the Windows stuff because I don't use it. So, but I do completely understand how this stuff can be really annoying. And I'm going to get to the Apple stuff in a minute because Apple's not perfect either. They came out with their earnings today. I guess their iPhone sales are doing better in China. That was basically the news out because there's real concern that Apple's losing market share in China as there's just cheaper alternatives out there. And it's not just cheap in terms of like low quality. Inexpensive is probably the better word. China makes decent phones these days, the same way the Koreans make decent phones, and there's going to be probably other choices out there in the future. I mean, one day maybe India will have like a really competitive phone, or Vietnam. I mean, you never know, and Europe can come out with something cool as well. But at the moment, though, they're saying they're picking up more in China. The thing, though, that is worrying a lot of people in the Apple world, if you guys follow the tech stuff, is Apple is going to subscription models also. So this just came out just a week or so ago. Apple bundles creative apps such as Final Cut and Logic Pro into single subscription, right? So basically, you will own nothing, you will rent everything. And that could end up being a trend, both in hardware and software, where we don't buy anything. They just want us to perpetually rent. And I don't think people are going to like that. I just want to buy something one time and it's mine. And I've had companies like kind of cheat you, or cheat me actually, where you buy something, right? And you think that's like a lifetime access. And then it turns out, oh, by the way, you're going to turn off features or lose access unless you subscribe, to a monthly fee. And it's like, $10 or whatever a month. So not popular. And I can see why this game is being played. And then you take a look at the landscape of our job market. It says U.S. companies are still slashing jobs to reverse pandemic hiring boom. And basically economic uncertainty and threats from AI, they're slimming down. And they have this really important chart here. It says employees notified of layoffs. And effectively, that's just going up, right? More people are getting those notifications. And then when you look at, the top of the food chain, they're getting all, I guess, pay raises. Wells Fargo boosts CEO pay 28% to $40 million in key year. And that's just coming out today. And I just wanted to lay it all out for you, as honestly, I think this is major news where Musk is trying to figure out a way to prop up his companies. Plus Altman's trying to figure out, okay, how can I get that money before it's gone, before it all dries up and the hype dies down? I want to hear your thoughts on any one of these stories, as they're all connected. I do appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video.